Right. Hello, YouTubers. Um, this is Neil in Lake Point Machinery Limited. This is part one of a little series I'm probably going to try and keep doing on a 1996 registered 1993 model Mazda B2200 2.2 diesel restoration, or some people might say it's a fuck up. But anyway, so I bought this 1996 B2200 3 years ago, I think, roughly, with the intention of restoring it and using it after. It seems to be super rare in Ireland. I haven't seen one on the roads. I haven't seen one advertised anywhere since I bought this. So I'll bring you up to speed on what I've done so far, and as I'm going along, I put up a few photos of the pickup as it was when I bought it, and so on. If you want to follow the build from the beginning, you'll find me on Instagram, and you can follow everything there as I'm going along. I'll put the link in the description or on the screen or whatever. So basically, I had planned originally to restore this as it was, retain and keep everything. But the more I thought about it, I had decided then to go down a different route, which is, some people say it's just ruining the whole thing, but I see it as a huge upgrade and just bringing everything back to a more modern setup. So what I've decided to do, I'll just show you here 1 second. So basically, so you can give you a better view of the chassis. That's the body there, and that's the tub, both in extremely good condition. Even the bottom of the tub is just surface rust. There's matchbox size pieces to be welded, and I mean like 2 or 3 pieces. Other than that, it can be sanded back or blasted back and then epoxy primed and all that. So I have the main body on a dolly at the moment because it's just handy to get it on and off the lift. And also I'll be able to stand it up on its back on the dolly when I'm cleaning underneath. It just makes everything a lot handier. Inside the engine bay here, it's all good condition. It's just surface rust. There's no major holes or damage or anything like that. The interior is like savage. It's just completely original, nothing missing, nothing broken. The bench seat's still there. Smells like mid-90s. It's just class. So that's the original Perkins there, absolutely bulletproof. That's a 5-speed box. Shares some internals with the RX-7, Mazda RX-7 box. Very reliable and all that, but a very low ratio. And unfortunately, this Perkins only came with 69 horsepower from the factory. So, although it's super reliable, there's just no power. That Perkins actually is not manufactured by Perkins. It's a Perkins engine, blueprinted and licensed to Mazda to manufacture. So it's actually a Mazda manufactured Perkins 2.2 diesel. Right, so anyone that knows is kind of wondering, like you're probably wondering what the fuck is going on with the back end of this. So I'm just going to go around here and explain what it is and what I'm doing. So This originally this pickup came like all of them really. Solid back axle, leaf springs, very simple. But when I purchased it, or when I was viewing it, the chassis basically from roughly here back was it wasn't salvageable really. So initially I planned on just, building the jig, putting the original chassis in the jig, and remaking the back half of the chassis as per factory, and then restoring everything. But the more and more I thought about it, I would have, I was toying with the idea of converting the rear to independent rear suspension. But the problem with doing that with all these pickups is the shock tops. So normally shock tops in cars and stuff, they're all, the top mounts are part of the actual shell, not the chassis, if you kind of follow me. So I wasn't willing to do some kind of a shitty fabrication job on the tub or whatever to accommodate the tops of the shocks. So I had to look to see what cars or estates and so on would have flat top subframes, which there isn't many of. But I did manage to do a bit of research and find out that this subframe here, which is from a BMW E39 Touring 530D, the older 530D. I think it's from 2001. So the reason I went with this was, if you look at the shock setup, so the shocks are bolted to the bottom of the subframe here on the lower wishbone, but they're integral to the subframe. So they don't need a shock top. They don't need the shock tower to be actually on the shell or on the chassis elsewhere, or the body or the tub. So it's a completely standalone unit, and it's absolutely perfect. Well, so far, for a pickup to fit under the bed, so I thought. But it's looking well at the moment. Sorry, I know if my cameras are all over the place. I'm just couldn't be arsed trying to pay attention to it because it takes so much time to do this. Anyway, so what I had to do was, these E39 Tourings as well, they come from the factory on airbags, which is great. And that was another reason why I went with the E39 subframe. Also, you have the option as well to do so much with the diff. You can change diffs out, you can redo the internals for different ratios. So there's loads of options there for rear ratios to suit whatever drivetrain and gearbox you're going to use in the front, whether manual or automatic or whatever. So there's huge options there. And plus you have the uprated brakes, and so on. And when I was doing my research, I noticed as well that the 4 subframe mounts were very close to the internal, or to the width of the chassis rails of the Mazda, which you can see there, the 4 mounts where the primer is. It's working out really well. So, getting back to the beginning, so as I said, I'll probably throw up a few pictures as I'm going along, and talking about this. But basically put the pickup up on the lift, took off the body, took off the tub, wheeled forward the chassis, took some measurements and so on. Got some 70 by 70 box there, as you can see in the chassis jig. Made up the jig to captivate all the main points. So you have the front here, with the heavy threaded bar there. The reason I have jack and bolts here on the front is so when I would have it in the jig, I'd be able to pull down the whole chassis down to ride height, as if the engine and running gear was in it, and level off the chassis. Because if you didn't do that, then everything in the back after would be wrong. that was an important thing to get right at the beginning, just to, be able to pull the chassis down to ride height, after the running gear and everything else taken off it, to simulate the standard factory weight. So the next issue then was, to captivate the whole chassis in the jig and retain the factory wheelbase, or else that'd just be a shit show then if you didn't pay attention to that. So the way I did that was, I basically cut these brackets. So basically I cut these brackets. The reason they're this shape is so that when I pull down the chassis, there'll be enough flex in these plates to allow the suspension camber to, pull in when I pull down the chassis. And they work well. And another reason is, so you can see the two plates here, an inside one and an outside one. So when I bolted in the original chassis, I had a 6-bolt Mazda plate cut that bolted on here, and that captivated the rear of the chassis, the original chassis. And then I was able to make sure that the wheelbase both sides was within the mill from factory, which it was when I captivated. You can see there, that's the front 6-bolt, original 6-bolt. This is the BMW 5-bolt. So when I had that done, and I knew that I had the wheelbase set in stone basically, I cut out the rear half of the chassis completely. But first of all, captivating all the tub mounts there, same here with the cab mounts, just to make sure that the most important key points in the chassis were held in place. And then, so I cut out the rear, and basically I was left with what you see here, with basically the brown dirt. So then I was able to put the subframe in, with these newer BMW plates, and bolt them into the BMW wheel width or wheelbase width, but still captivating and keeping the originally factory wheelbase. And the next challenge then I had was to build the chassis around the airbags. Now, the airbags are gone here at the moment because I have the top mounts, or the top mounts for the airbags sent off for just a small bit of machining to allow the bags to be retained to the top of the mount, as per the BMW car itself, the way it's done. So at the moment, all these measurements, or where the subframe sits, is as per an E39 BMW Touring. Your diff height. I went with a 2-degree pinion angle in the diff. Probably can't see it there now. It is actually cocked up in the front 2 degrees exactly. And the gearbox I'm going using, and the engine box running gear, I'll try and keep the same up front here, so there'll be a nice 2 degree pinion to center bear, or pinion to carrier bearing angle, which should be roughly around there somewhere. But a 2 degree angle is fine. So that kind of brings things up to speed. I'm not going to get into other bits and pieces there yet, because that will come in other later parts of the video or parts of the series. So today what I'm going to do is just getting these engine mounts, or sorry, these subframe mounts welded up. I'll just show you what these consist of. Right, so these are the original subframe bolts. So you can see here, one second now. Right. So that's the subframe mount there on the E39 subframe. So I basically drew up these on CAD, these little bushings that fit in there. They're location bushings. And these are the same dimensions as the stud that would be coming down from the bottom of the shell in an E39 Touring to receive the subframe. So that goes in there, exact same as the BMW pickup point. Then got these rings laser cut. They fit down there, nice and neat. That's a finished one. Just a bit of well-through primer there to try and stop rust. So that sits in there like that. Then I have some hydraulic tubing here, and I basically mortised it to fit in here, so that goes in like that. Sorry. I use shit in this one. The way I have it set up. Anyway. So that just goes in like that. Right? Tacked, welded. Can be welded up here, across here. Same here. The same at the two rears. So they're going to come out. They worked out really well. The original bolt then just rolls up, and that's going to be very easy to drop down in future if any work needs to be done on the subframe or anything like that. So yeah. What else? Today as well, I'll probably get these fish plates welded up in some key places on the chassis just for strength. You can see here, like, I mean, pretty tight, but it worked out well. There's no major real close points or anything. It's just this is in nicely. So for part one, that's about as much as I'm going to get into, because I need to get a few hours done now today on it and move it a bit forward. Like, I'm not far from getting it out of the chassis jig. If I get these mounts with the root welds on them today, and then next week I should have the airbag mounts, top mounts back, and then I'll do a part two on what's involved in getting those mocked up and fitted and so on and welded. Then I'll probably leave the chassis in the jig, stand it up on its ends, so I'm welding on the flat on all those fish plates and the final welds on those mounts, just to get neater welds done and not be trying to weld vertical. I'll definitely leave it in the jig because I don't want anything pulling. And I'll do a part two at that stage then and bring you back up to speed on the progress. So obviously starting off I was afraid of ruining the whole thing, but I had a fair idea that I'd figure it out. So I'm not saying it's figured out, I'm just saying it's coming out way better than I thought it was going to come out. Heights and everything are spot on. So I'm just hoping that I haven't overlooked something, and that when I put back on the body in the next 2 or 3 weeks and the tub, that I just hope everything lines up and that there's nothing stupid that I've overlooked. But I can't think of anything. Yeah, so In other future parts of the series I'm going to do as well, I'll update you on, or fill you in on the exact running gear I'm using, what gearbox I'm using, and hope that that'll work. Engine mounts for that are going to be interesting. Gearbox cross member is going to be interesting. Getting the prop shortened and balanced, that's going to be another challenge. The steering rack is manual at the moment. The power steering version of that, I think there was only a few made in Japan at the time. They're like unicorn shit. I don't even know if you could even find them in Japan. They're that rare. So I have a steering box here out of a Ford Ranger, 2003 Ford Ranger, which is very similar. And I'm hoping that's going to work. If not, I'm going to use the original steering box and then add in a electric power steering unit, column unit out of a Toyota Prius, which are cheapest chips, about €200 for the kit, for the steering column and the controller. And all you do is give it 12 volts, and it's not hard to install either. And that would be another option if this power steering conversion doesn't work for me. So that's it really. I decided, just where I cut the chassis, I decided to come into the chassis a bit further, just to ensure that, I was definitely working with, clean factory steel, which I am now. From here on up is absolutely perfect. It's not even bad inside. I have a cross section cut here, you can see. That's factory. It hasn't lost any of its thickness from here up. So from here back then it's brand new. And after the fish plates are done, strengthener plates are done, I mean, it's going to be far stronger than factory, less flex than factory. But it's going to need it because it's going to have a lot more horsepower than what it had from factory. So there's loads of challenges ahead and things to figure out. But I'm kind of looking forward to figuring all that out on the, as I'm going along. So that's it. I'll leave that for part one. Probably the sound is shit, probably the filming is shit, camera work is shit, but I don't care. I just said I'd do it to document it, in case it might help someone else in the future to get their project done. If anyone has any questions about the subframe, engine mounts, the chassis jig, anything like that, just ask me in the comments and I'll reply back. I haven't seen anyone else anywhere on any medium installing an E39 Touring rear subframe into a mini truck or a pickup. I've seen them do it with the sedan version of this subframe, which requires the shocks to have top mounts or shock towers or top mounts made, and that fucks up the bed in of the tub. You have to go cutting bits out of the tub, and it just makes it look shit, in my opinion. And you have big lumps and parts cut out of the floor of the bed, of the bed, and I wouldn't like that. That's why the touring subframe lends itself so well to a flatbed rear end on a mini truck. So yeah, there's loads of other stuff there I could go on about, but I will do that in a later part. And I'll mention some people who have done stuff for me, machine stuff for me, and supplied stuff for me that I couldn't get in Ireland, for one reason or another. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that bit so far. I'm not a YouTuber, like, hate this shit, but anyway, give me a like and subscribe there if you want to follow along and see how this thing is going to turn out. The goal is just to be painting the body basically next summer. So that's given me just over a year or whatever to get all this figured out. Starting, driving, braking, and then when that's all done and figured out, the whole thing has to be stripped back to every nut and bolt off that chassis. The whole thing sandblasted, treated, and then every nut and bolt built back up, restored, new components, everything, right back up to the finished product. So that's going to take it's going to take another year or two, I suppose, realistically. But then you never know. If I keep doing this a few hours every week, you'd be surprised what you get done, you know. So that's it. See you later.